Welcome back to the channel. We're going to one of my favorite short tracks in all of iRacing on this week's edition. We're headed to Rockingham Speedway, affectionately known as The Rock. It opened on October 31st, 1965, with the first race being won by Curtis Turner. The last race was held 2004. Matt Kenseth won that race very narrowly over Casey Kane, if anybody remembers seeing that. The track's a 1 mile D-shaped oval with banking of 22 and 25 degrees in the corners, and you've got about 8 degrees of banking on the start or on the front and back stretch. This week's race will be 90 laps with a start time of noon, and this is kind of key because it's going to be hot. It's going to get loose really quickly. Just the nature of this track, the pavement as a whole is very porous, very worn, and it's really going to wear your tires. That being said, we're going to bust right into what I have for you as far as info related to the setup. I ran about 3 different things, and I think I found a really good mixture of it all for everybody, but we'll go ahead and cover that. The first setup that I just ran the box stock 12-1 like we usually do. Ran 45 laps. We were really tight. I mean, it didn't matter how I drove it. The car was just tight. And it really wanted to push coming out of turn 2, headed for that wall. You had to really stay on top of your game to get the car to rotate, kind of managing the brake and the gas to get it to come around. As far as tire wear goes, the right front was worn at 80% compared to all the rest, which were right about the low 90s. So you really, if you like a tight setup, you're gonna really have to manage the way that you run the track. I highly suggest what I've come to know as the Kyle Petty line. You may ask, what is the Kyle Petty line? Well, as you can see from the video that I'm showing you, it's running that bottom, checking up early, making sure you rotate through smoothly, coming out nice and easy. And if this race runs green, like I've had a lot of them do here, this is going to be your optimal line, because as you go, you're going to have people just start fading back to you because you're not overdriving your entry, you're not overdriving your exit, and you're saving that tire, and you'll ultimately save fuel as well. And I think if you played your cards right, you can probably stretch this tank and make it an entire race on 1 tank of fuel. So keep that in mind too. If you get a caution or 2 early on, you may not need fuel. So you might pay attention to your black box as this race goes. Now the next setup that I ran, we ran another 45 laps. I ran just 14-1, no offset on the wheel. It made the car feel a lot looser. I felt like I could kind of put it anywhere I wanted to. Later in the run, it did tighten up, so you may have to adjust that line. Again, I was running that Kyle Petty line for most of this testing, and right front usage was about 83%. I was really happy with that. At that amount, we know we're going to have tire come long run at the end of the race. So for what I felt was the fastest and most consistent, I decided to drop it to a -4 offset on the steering, and it felt very free. I mean, you could almost kind of feel the car loosen right up and want to walk on exit and things like that. That being said, after a 45 lap run, right front was 3% higher. My fastest lap was a 25.9. I think if you're looking for a qualifying hot lap, obviously you're not going to want to run the bottom, but you could obviously get the lap time down lower. And I would probably look at running low in 1 and 2, mid to high in 3 and 4, and carry that speed out. And you may want to run that 12-1 for your qualifying. Like I said, overall, this track is a lot of fun to me. I really enjoy this, and I'm not much of a short track guy, as most of you probably know. But this is one of the fun ones that you can get in there and you can dice 2x2, and it's a fun time. Just be mindful to not get tight on exit, and you're going to have a great race. I think you might have to play around with your brake bias a little bit, depending how it feels and what steering ratio you went with. If you do the 12-to-1, I would suggest maybe lowering that brake bias down a little bit, just to kind of loosen it up early. I wouldn't go below 50 still, because if you've got to lock it up to avoid somebody, you're not really going to want to do the old spin out while trying to avoid them and possibly ruin your race as well. So that concludes our video and our walkthrough for the Rock. If anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, put them down in the chat. If you really need to get a hold of me on Discord, and I can walk you through how to drive it a little bit better. But that is your walkthrough for week 3 of the 87 series for iRacing. We'll catch you on the track, guys.